You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh, God, the boss has crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's going to be wholly unprofessional.
Keep together strong. Let that be your mantra.
These are the voyages of the Labor John podcast. Its continuing mission to tackle the working class history of Philadelphia and the surrounding world with comprehensive research and off-color absurdity. To boldly go where no self-respecting podcast has gone before.
I'm currently tugging down my jacket a la Picard.
The Christie maneuver.
Yes. Well, I guess it's my vest because it's not a Lycra jumpsuit.
Today we're going to boldly go where?
To the 1987 NFLPA strike.
Oh.
And specifically the Philadelphia Eagles during the 1987 NFLPA strike.
Okay. Well, engage.
Roger that. So I wanted to do this one. I wrote this before last Saturday. So the beginning, you can tell, because I start by saying, so Philadelphia sports teams are doing surprisingly well right now.
Ha ha. Ah.
Yeah. But the Eagles are still doing surprisingly well. So we're going to talk about a cool piece of Eagles history and Philly sports labor history.
Nice. You know how to ride the right coattails, Gabe.
Oh, yeah.
You're great at this.
So first we should talk about football, the NFL and the NFLPA.
Mm-hmm.
For those who are unfamiliar with it, football is a sport originating in the late 19th century with a similar origin.
You can really go on a deep dive here.
Oh, yeah. Similar origin to rugby. Basically, you have two 11-person teams trying to move a smallish leather ball towards the opponent's end zone.
Okay.
And this all happens on either side of a 100-yard field. In the process of moving said ball to either side of said field, your opponents are going to try to stop you from doing so by using their bodies to block their path or to block your path, and or tackling you. So it can be a fairly violent sport, and takes a pretty heavy toll on your body, and that becomes important later on.
Okay.
So, professional football is generally organized under a 501c6 trade association known as the National Football League, or NFL.
Oh, okay.
This was founded in 1920, and basically they oversee all of the major professional football teams, setting rules. They set minimum pay rates, benefits, and all of that. So while we'll be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, the Eagles players are part of the Eagles team, which is then part of the National Football League. So the National Football League Players Association was founded in 1956. It originally started as just an advocacy group for the players, but then basically almost immediately turned into an actual union.
Yeah.
And they started out by fighting for a league-wide minimum salary, per diem for road games, and they wanted the teams to pay for the equipment that everyone wore, because before that, the league set what equipment you had to have, and then all of the players had to buy it themselves.
Okay.
Which is kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
So, unsurprisingly, the owners of all of the teams and the NFL didn't like that, and despite agreeing to basically all of the demands, they, after being threatened with an antitrust lawsuit, They refused to actually recognize the union.
My wife threatens me with an antitrust lawsuit every time I come home from the goddamn bar, Gabe. Every single
Fair. There were a couple of different, some weird things going on with the National Football League Players Association and the American Football League Players Association, because they were two separate things, because the AFL and the NFL were separate. They merged in 1970. So the two players associations merged. And then basically the important thing to note is that in 1970, they went on strike. Then again in 1974 and again in 1982. Basically every time they were signing a 4 to 5 year contract. And every time the contract was up, the NFL would try and crush the union, and they went on strike.
Oh, nice.
So let's fast forward to 1987. Yeah, so the collective bargaining agreement from 1982 had expired, and they were in negotiations for a new one. And those negotiations pretty much stalled out almost immediately. The players' demands were better pension benefits, specifically, I'll get into the specifics in a second. They wanted to change the drug testing policy, increase the minimum salary scales.
Sure
they wanted contract guarantees and ending the use of AstroTurf, which showed up in like every single, or every time they went on strike, they were demanding an end to the use of AstroTurf, and it just always disappeared in negotiations. So for pensions, they wanted the NFL to put in they wanted the NFL to put in $25 million annually to the pension fund. The NFL countered with $12.5 million. For drug testing, the players wanted a probable cause policy to be put in place. So like, if you showed up to practice smoking a joint, then they might drug test you. But the NFL wanted to continue with their just random drug testing approach. I'm sure that was also, there's probably more so to do with whatchamacallit, performance enhancing drugs rather than, well, it wasn't clear if it was for steroids or just it was recreational use. Yeah, that's true.
Probably steroids.
Yeah.
I don't think no one's showing up with the joint and be like, it's a performance enhancing drug.
Then,
man, this AstroTurf is really fucking comfy. They got to make a couch out of this, man.
Well, that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to tear up all of the AstroTurf fields so that they could make couches out of it. And just get like real comfy in the locker rooms. Yeah. And that's why they're called green rooms. So the players were asking for a $90,000 minimum salary for rookies, up to a minimum salary of $230,000 for players who had been playing for 13 years or more. The NFL countered with a rookie salary of $60,000 and a 13-year salary of $180,000. Then the turf issue was actually a workplace safety issue. That all of the players were convinced that they got injured more on AstroTurf than they did on actual sod.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get it, replaced. But the NFL was just like, that's too expensive. We're only a multi-million-dollar corporation.
Oh yeah.
We can't spend that money. The other thing was they wanted changes to the free agency policy, which I got a little confused by. So I think they were, the issue was if a player took a contract with a new team, they had to pay penalties to their old team when they left. So basically, they had to pay out of pocket to take a new job. Now, we should say I'm going to preemptively defend the players a little bit here because
I thought that's kind of, well, I mean, we're telling a story, but I thought that's kind of what we were doing.
Yeah, but we're talking about a bunch of pretty much millionaires going on strike.
Yeah.
And demanding higher wages.
Okay.
So we should explain that the median family income in 1987 was a little bit over $30,000. These guys were making about $170,000 or that was the median income for football players. But the average career length was 3.2 years.
Yeah.
So, and after that, you, like we were talking about, your brain is mush because you've had a million concussions and both of your knees are shot and your whole body is just destroyed because you smashed into people for 2 years straight, or 3.2 years.
So
you can't really do any other work after that.
Yep. Okay.
So basically these guys had to make as much money as they can as quickly as they could and then hope that they could get a career afterwards. And I should also say the average lifespan of an NFL player in 1987 was 55 years. The national average was 70.
A little bit higher.
Yeah. So you lost 15 years of your life just by playing in the NFL. So these weren't entirely unreasonable demands. Okay, so now let's get to the actual strike. So like I said, negotiations stalled and a strike date was set for Tuesday, September 22nd, 1987. The Eagles played against New Orleans that Sunday, and they were all in pretty good spirits because they won. But only 5 players had been part of the 82 strike. Everyone else was like a 1 or 2 year rookie. Their coach, Buddy Ryan. Yeah. He secretly supported the strike and basically told his guys, like, hey, stick together. You're going to get through this. It'll be okay. And Randall Cunningham, the quarterback, was also pretty good at keeping everyone together because both Cunningham and Buddy Ryan knew that when the strike ended, they needed to have a cohesive team that was still together. Yeah. And if like half of the guys crossed the picket line, they're basically the season was shot because no one's going to work together after that. So then also during that game against New Orleans, the sheet metal workers union hired a plane to fly over Veterans Stadium with a banner saying "Sheet metal workers support the NFLPA."
Oh, okay.
So we were starting to get basically the union movement and all the working class people in Philly started to show support for the NFL players.
Yeah.
And there were some great interviews that the Inquirer did of people leaving the stadium after the New Orleans game. They interviewed, I think it was like a truck driver and a welder, and both of them were basically saying like, yeah, these players are just destroying their bodies for our entertainment. They deserve to get all of their demands.
Yeah.
And then they interviewed a banker, and he was upset that the strike might get in the way of him watching the rest of the season.
Aww.
Yeah. So then, all right, so day 1 of the strike. Management, or the NFL, had already canceled week 3 of the 1987 season. But that was just a way for them to buy themselves some time so that they could put together scab teams.
Oh.
Yeah. that morning, on Tuesday the 22nd, 34 striking Eagles players showed up out front of Veterans Stadium with picket signs and the Scab Buster.
Oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, Scab Buster was a 1985 Ford Bronco painted in Eagles regalia with a giant sign on the front saying Scab Busters. And it had NFLPA Scab Patrol written on the window shield or the windshield. It's fucking amazing. So that was the Scab Buster was, I think, linebacker Jody Schultz's truck. And at first they just brought it out for show.
Oh shit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
So the players were out there, or they set up a picket line. The guys that got interviewed said that they weren't there for a fight. They didn't want like any major confrontation. They just wanted to talk to the scabbing players and say and basically look them eye to eye and make them realize what they were doing. That being said, John Spagnola, who was the player representative, gave a press conference because Norman Brayman, the owner of the Eagles, gave a press conference the night before basically saying that they were a bunch of whiny babies. So Spagnola shot back by saying Brayman compared our salaries to other union workers, such as teachers and policemen. Meanwhile, he's trying to break our union with his scabs. I find a lot of irony in that. He made no mention of the fact that he makes more in one day than those union workers make in a year. He is his own worst enemy. If he wants to play show and tell with us every day, fine. We all know what the public opinion of Norman Brayman is. So he was calling him out pretty hard.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he could have just driven the Scab Buster through his house or something too.
Yeah. So the rest of the day,
you said that was a Ford Bronco?
Yes.
You think maybe that was the same Ford Bronco that OJ drove? Oh, am I getting too much in this OJ?
It was it might have been a white Ford Bronco. That's a good
We are going to
question.
find out if OJ actually did it.
Yep.
We're just joking. He actually did it.
All of the reporting about it kept calling it a Jeep. But
it's more of a truck.
Yeah. Well, I had to do some investigative reporting and look up all of the Ford Bronco models from the 1980s. And this is the only one where the headlights matched.
Look at that dedication.
Yeah.
Look at that dedication. The man's doing football. Now he's doing cars.
Yeah.
Gabe's out of his element here. I love it, though.
Basically, the rest of the day, or most of the rest of the day, they spent barbecuing out front of Veterans Stadium, marching around, chanting, and it just sounded like it was a good day on the picket line.
Well, I mean, these are all usual occurrences at the Veterans Stadium in the 80s, though.
Basically, they were just tailgating, but with picket signs. The only other incident that happened was a tractor trailer pulled up and was trying to pull into the stadium. And so all of the players swarmed around it and started banging their fists on it and trying to get it to move back because they thought that it was the owners trying to move a bunch of equipment in so they could set up practice for the scab team. Then after about 10 minutes, someone finally explained to them that it was an ESPN news crew that was moving in to set up their shots for the Temple game that was supposed to happen at Veterans that night.
Oh, okay.
So then they backed off. But yeah, so tensions were pretty high, but the day went off peacefully, which was good. Day 2, Eagles go back to Veterans Stadium at 8 a.m. they find out that they'd been outflanked and the scab team was already there in the locker room.
Really?
Turns out the scab team got there at 6 a.m.
Ooh.
Yeah. So they were getting their physicals and all of their equipment handed out to them. So rather than setting up a picket line around the stadium, the Eagles regrouped and came up with a new plan.
Please tell me this ends with a pickup football game of the Scabs against the original Eagles.
Sadly, no. It does. The story does end with a football game.
The winner gets a contract.
Yeah. Honestly, that's what they should have done. It should have been the owners versus the players in a football game to decide on who wins the strike.
Oh, yeah. That's going to work.
Yeah, that's fair. So someone figured out that they were housing the Scabs in the Hilton Hotel in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. So, So they came up
some wacky 80s hijinks.
Yeah. So they came up with a new plan. They'll move the picket line to the hotel and catch the Scabs when they're being bussed back after their morning physicals and equipment fittings and everything. So everyone loads up in their cars and they basically just floor it over to New Jersey. I couldn't find any pictures of this happening, but I imagine it as basically the montage from Zoolander when they're driving around in the Jeep.
Okay.
After the
before they blow themselves up?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Right.
After the orange mocha frappuccinos. But like slightly more buff and probably with like either PBR or
yeah, okay. And less fiery inferno.
Yes.
In the end there. Okay.
Presumably they didn't get the grill lit because they were moving the picket line.
3rd degree burn. So hot right now.
It was never explicitly stated because there are now like 4 fucking Hilton hotels in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, because New Jersey just exists as hotels for people coming to the Philadelphia airport. The
entirety of New Jersey,
I guess, like
that sucks.
The closest near the place is near Philly. I think it was the Hilton Garden Inn that is off of Route 73. So they pull into the parking lot and set up another picket line blocking the entrance. And I should say at this point, all of the players are pretty pissed off. They know the strike isn't going to be over soon. They were initially optimistic that something might actually come out of the negotiations, but a lot of the owners had left the bargaining table because they had basically like 3 or 4 of the individual teams' owners were actually sitting down at the bargaining table with the union reps. But they had all left. So they found that out this morning and everybody was pissed because that meant negotiations were going to shut down. They just had to dig in for a strike.
Yeah.
Also, now that they saw the NFL the NFL actually like training scab teams, they figured out that wasn't a bluff.
Well, at least if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can hold out on a strike longer than these families that are making $30,000, you know?
Yeah. They do have that going for them. The other side of it is if the season runs on scab players, once the strike's over, the actual players have to pick up the pieces and are like, they'll still be held responsible for whatever the win rate was of the scab team.
True.
So they're
going to fuck up my fantasy football league.
Yeah, basically. But like that could hurt you in potential future career stuff. Because you get judged by that. So they set up the picket line. We're blocking the entrance to the Hilton. 2 tour buses pull off of Route 73 around noon. all the players tightened up. They basically formed a solid line to block the entrance. And first bus pulled up, and all of these basically was met with a line of pissed off football players staring him down.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So he backed up and then tried to pull into the other entrance. But they were ready for that. Jody Schultz jumped into Scab Buster and sped over to the other entrance before the bus could get there. And he just sat there staring the bus driver down.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. So at this point, though, because this is noontime traffic on a Wednesday, they were causing a traffic jam on Route 73.
Holy, okay.
That stretched back, I think it was like a little bit over a mile. So the police showed up to figure out what the fuck was going on. And why there was just a random traffic jam in Mount Laurel. So one of the New Jersey state troopers came up to Spagnola and just kindly asked him if they could move their picket line and let the buses into the parking lot so that everyone trapped on Route 73 could leave. And Spagnola didn't want to escalate the situation, so he relented, and they moved their picket line to the front steps of the hotel.
Okay.
Now, what that meant was that all of the scabs, who were mostly like young players in their early 20s, who had actually failed initial tryouts to get into the NFL, or get into the Eagles specifically, or just for whatever reason weren't able to do it professionally. So as all these like young 20-year-old guys walked in, they had to go through a gauntlet of veteran players.
Holy shit.
Who were telling them like, you're fucking ruining our lives. What the fuck are you doing?
Oh my God.
Yeah. And specifically, I think they mentioned that the players were specifically telling them, you're just being used by management to hurt us. You're not helping yourself. Management doesn't care about you.
Yeah.
And that's all true.
And then the scab player was like, can I have an autograph for my kid?
Yeah. So, well, from what they said, none of the scab players even looked him in the eyes. That,
oh, jeez.
Yeah, these guys were not feeling great about their situation.
Well, I mean, they're staying at a Hilton in South Jersey.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
gauntlet of professional football players is the least of their worries.
Yeah. So after the scab players walked through, the picket line moved into the hotel and over to the bar.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now we know we're in South Jersey.
Yep. So basically for the next few hours, the striking players and all of the scab players were just like hanging out in the hotel bar and lobby. And every once in a while, the striking players would go over and talk to some of the scabs and try and convince them to join the picket line. And just like basically go through the whole spiel of like, listen, you're not, or what you're doing isn't going to help you. You're just being used by the bosses to hurt us. Let's join the picket line. We can all come out of this on top.
Yeah.
And
if you ever get into this position, you're going to be as fucked as we are.
Yeah, exactly. But there wasn't any violence or like any threats or anything. It was just basically like older players coming over for some real talk and talking to these young guys. But even there, by most accounts, none of the scab players would look the veteran players in the eye. And after a couple hours, everybody went home. It was the 80s, so everybody was driving pretty buzzed anyway. So,
oh no.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone got into any accidents. It seems everyone was fine.
I mean, would you pull over an intoxicated person driving the Scab Buster?
That's true. Honestly, it's a big fucking sign. I want to know if he drove that on the highway without taking the sign off. Like, that really limits your vision. Okay, so first full week of the strike, everyone was on edge. Players knew they couldn't stop the scab team from practicing. They knew that a game was going to happen. On October 4th, there was a game scheduled against the Chicago Bears at Veterans Stadium. That was going to be the first real test of this replacement team. The NFL or the Eagles management was trying to like recoup some of their money and try and keep the season going. But Philly being Philly, by Wednesday, September 30th, 31,000 tickets had been returned.
Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm. So both people in Philly and Chicago had spoken. They were not going to cross the picket line.
Okay.
And the game that Sunday ended up having the lowest attendance of any major league sporting event since 1949.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Only 4,074 people showed up to Veterans Stadium, which can hold over 66,000.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Or which could hold. Yeah, so the was not a great look. And some of the folks that did show up, they hung
Well, it was bobblehead night, so
yeah. Some of the fans that showed up, one group of them had a bunch of sweaters that I think, if I remember correctly, the sweater said "Bring back the real team." And then someone also hung out a giant banner that just said, "This is sad." But I should also say those 4,074 people that went to the game showed up to Veterans Stadium and were suddenly face to face with 3,000 union members from the Philly AFL-CIO.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, because they came out to support the 35-man picket line. So you had AFSCME, USW, Teamsters, and a bunch of other unions showing up in solidarity with the Eagles players. There were also
these guys our special teams.
Yeah. There were also 350 cops there, a lot of them on horseback.
Oh, the police union came out to join in solidarity. That's
exactly.
So nice.
Yeah,
that's very unlike them.
Yeah. They also came out to shut down or to blockade 50 blocks in South Philly.
Wow.
Yeah, because they didn't want union members sneaking around the back and breaking into the stadium.
Jesus Christ.
And it should also be noted that where Veterans Stadium was, you had a lot more direct access to it from South Philly than you do with the stadiums today. Okay, so Randall Cunningham and John Spagnola had both wanted to use the picket line that day to basically just like talk to fans and convince them to give up their tickets and not see the game that day. But tensions were high. As we'd mentioned previously, this was pretty late in the Reagan administration. And working class Philadelphians were pretty pissed off. So Earl Stout, who was the head of AFSCME District Council 33, got interviewed and said, "This has nothing to do with football. We're here because..."
Oh, that's a good start.
Yeah.
Actually, Earl, it has everything to do with football.
I mean, a little bit. "This has nothing to do with football. We're here because we don't want what happened to the airport controllers to happen to us." Basically, like, every union member in Philly saw that this was happening, was like, okay, we're gonna show up in force and let people know not to fuck with union power in Philly.
Yeah. I dig it.
Yeah. So basically the picket line became a way for Philly unions to show labor power. Then everything was relatively peaceful until 11 a.m. when two officials from Chicago, one of whom was a cop, tried to get into the stadium, and 200 union members surrounded them and started harassing them.
Oh, Jesus.
The cops came in and broke it all up, and then just kind of pulled these two guys from Chicago aside and were like, you should just wait until things calm down a little bit, and then you can go in, but just stay back for now. The chief of police came over to Spagnola and told him that if he didn't get control of the crowd, they were going to start clearing folks out and break everything up.
Okay.
So Spagnola jumped on the bullhorn and told everyone to stay peaceful, not to turn the Eagles' picket into their own fight. A Teamster yelled from the crowd,
Oh, God.
"Don't show him you're weakening, John. We're here for you, John." So, yeah.
So the guy in the back?
Yeah. Apparently, John or Spagnola responded by saying, "I'm not weakening," and then just kind of walked away. So I should say, from the reporting that I found, there were no serious injuries. What the Philadelphia Daily News reported specifically was that no one was hospitalized.
Okay.
So it was about the same amount of violence as you get at any fucking Eagles game.
This is America, so no one can afford to go to the hospital. So
Exactly, especially in the 80s. So some
1,200 people were injured. No hospitalizations.
Yeah. There were definitely some people getting shoved. There's a lot of footage of people getting punched. And there were actually a couple instances where they convinced scab fans to not see the game. So there's some good shots of like people cheering as cars backed out and pulled away from the stadium.
Yeah.
Then there's also some great shots of like the Teamsters beating somebody up. It happens. Again, the only difference between today or that day and any other day at Veterans Stadium was that they were wearing a Teamsters jacket rather than an Eagles jersey.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's an Eagles game. Veterans
Stadium did have its own little jail and court and everything.
Yep. So the first scab game of the season.
I miss Veterans Stadium. They had the look and the feel. When you think of stadium, like the word stadium, in the dictionary, Veterans Stadium comes up,
Yeah.
It has the smell of, the turf and the piss.
Mm-hmm. It takes a solid like 30 or 40 years for the piss to properly ferment into the correct smell when it sits in the concrete for that long.
Exactly.
So it's really a shame they got rid of it.
Yeah. And now everything's like the Lockheed Martin field.
Yeah. And pretty soon it's all just going to be Bitcoin. Just everything. So the first scab game of the season ended in a 35-3 defeat for what I'm going to call the fake Eagles.
The fakies.
The fakies.
The figgles.
The figgles.
The figgles.
But the Wriggles, the real Eagles, held the picket line. Anyway, so the next game on the roster was against the Dallas Cowboys, who are the primary rivals.
Fan favorites.
Yeah. So the Eagles' replacement team got squashed 41-22 by the Cowboys.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a tough one. Who do I cheer on there?
The
Scabs or the fucking Cowboys?
The Cowboys were also a scab team.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Still.
They were actually a mostly scab team at this point. I think there were a couple Cowboys that had crossed the picket line. And so that's one. So while the Eagles were holding their picket line, one, they were fucking pissed that their replacement team lost to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
But the Eagles were not the only team on strike. And basically every week, more and more players cross the picket line. So the Eagles held their picket line. There were 3 players that crossed because they had outstanding injuries, and they didn't cross to play. They crossed the picket line to get health care.
Oh, okay.
And they crossed with support from from the team.
Oh, okay.
So that's fine.
Yeah.
Basically, like, by the end of the strike, I think it's like over 20% of the players had crossed the picket line. So that's not great. So what ended up happening is the strike itself was basically a total failure because aside from the Eagles, everyone caved.
Oh, and they had the scab buster too.
I know that, like, it really pisses me off that a strike this fucking cool didn't work.
Yeah, I know.
But
man.
So basically the players ended up losing in like cumulatively the Eagles players lost like a couple $1 million over 4 weeks.
Yeah.
They lost a lot of prestige, and because the replacement team got decimated at every turn, and the union as a whole lost a lot of bargaining power because everybody
They caved.
They caved, and they had a lot more trouble making demands after that. So the Eagles themselves felt betrayed by every player who would cross the picket line. A lot of those players happened to be on the Dallas Cowboys. On October 25th, they had an opportunity to take that frustration out.
Oh, there we go.
So this was the first game back after the strike at Veterans Stadium and against the Cowboys.
What the fuck sounds like a 1985 Ford Bronco? Playing tight end, the Scab Buster.
Yeah.
Why is there blood all over that truck?
Yeah. I mean, so judging by the interviews that some of these players gave before the game, if they could get away with it, they would have fucking brought the Scab Buster onto the field.
Jesus Christ.
Because they were telling the Inquirer that they were out for blood. They didn't want to just beat the Cowboys. They wanted to kill them.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like they were not fucking around. Everybody was just pissed off. So the game itself was like just pretty fucking ferocious. They were not holding back. The Eagles ended up winning 37-20.
Hey.
And kind of to add insult to injury, in the last like couple minutes of the game after it was basically decided and after the game was basically over, the Eagles kept playing full tilt. So the final score of the game with like seconds on the clock was from the 1 yard line. And they basically were just like, we're just going to fucking score again because we fucking hate you right now.
Yeah.
So they just wanted to like twist the knife a little bit more, which I can get that because
it's the Cowboys.
Yeah, it's the Cowboys, and it's the Cowboys after they broke ranks with you during a strike.
Yeah, I guess so.
I mean, also it's just the Cowboys. So
It's just the Cowboys.
but I like to say that the NFLPA lost the 1987 strike, but the Eagles won because
they beat the Cowboys.
they beat the Cowboys, which is all that matters.